The following story contains themes or elements that may not be appropriate for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to Whisperwood Stories. Today we read another story from nosleep. From user 19 Jersey Devil 95. Let's begin. My brother's good fortune. I didn't believe it when my older brother claimed he had won the lottery. $450,000 after taxes. We grew up in a fairly low-class family. There were 5 of us, my parents, a couple that should have never gotten married to begin with, my older brother Frankie, 32 male, then there was my sister Cam, 27 female, and then me, the baby of the family, 26 male. Our parents did their best to keep us with a roof over our heads and food in our bellies. Financially and emotionally, our childhood was a struggle for sure, but we always managed to just scrape by. The point being, to us, that was a lot of money. Life-changing. And my brother was no Scrooge either. He was already making plenty of money as the chief of police in our small New Jersey town. So he made it a point to spoil my sister and I with his winnings. I remember when he handed me the keys to my new truck just 3 months ago. I had insisted that it was too much, that I couldn't possibly take it. He only laughed and shoved the keys into my hand. "Just make sure you get rid of that hunk of junk you're driving now," he told me. "Thing's not safe." Hell, not only did he shell out for a new car for our sister, but he even paid for her wedding to our brother-in-law Kyle, 28 male. A few years back, we had cut ties with our parents, who were now happily divorced, or so they said. Their animosity towards each other felt poisonous after years of a miserable marriage. So we had made it a point to just stick together, just the 3 of us. With the addition of our brother-in-law, of course, and my longtime girlfriend Amelia, 26 female. But the one thing my brother bought himself with his lotto winnings was a small cabin deep in the Pine Barrens. As somewhat of a novice camper myself, I couldn't wait to get the call to pack up and spend the weekend. And last month, the call finally came. Everyone took off that Friday, and we met Cam and Kyle at a nearby convenience store so they could follow us up to the cabin, where we would be spending the next long weekend. Frankie had warned us that we couldn't exactly find the cabin via GPS, and since I was better with directions, it just seemed easier. His instructions took us down this long dirt road for about a good 20 minutes. The trees crowded the road as if they were being used as a barrier to keep people out of the woods. "This has to be the scariest place at night," Amelia whispered. "Yeah," I agreed. "Probably best if we don't wander too far from the cabin." And almost as if it were queued up, the road opened to a large clearing that revealed the cabin. Looking at its size, however, it seemed like more of a lodge. Judging from the deck above the porch, it was safe to say that it was 2 stories. It had a large wrapper on the porch and big, beautiful windows. Nearby, there was a large deck that led out to what appeared to be a private lake. We pulled up to Frankie's Jeep and admired the cabin. "Man, he must have really splurged on this," Kyle commented. I rolled my eyes, recalling a distasteful indication from Kyle a few weeks ago that our brother should have bought him and Cam a house with his money. "It's amazing," Cam commented as she grabbed her bags from the back seat. Suddenly, the door flung open and Frankie bounded down the steps. "You made it!" he exclaimed. He came down and gave me and my sister a hug, gave Amelia and Kyle the courteous greeting a brother-in-law would usually make, and stood with a huge grin on his face. "You find it okay?" he asked. "It was hard to get lost with all the trees," I replied. "These woods are dense as hell." He merely laughed. "Yeah, it's pretty nice, isn't it?" he asked. "Finally, Some safety and privacy, he chuckled, as if he didn't get that at his main house that was nestled in town. He almost seemed like he couldn't believe his luck. Well, come on in. I'll give you the tour. He waved us inside, and we all bound up the steps and into the large living room of the lodge. It had a nice stone fireplace, a big screen TV, 2 couches that might as well have been beds, and a chair that looked like it could swallow you whole. Hanging on the walls of the cabin were family photos, as well as some pop culture posters, which, knowing my brother, was to be expected. There were also 2 bookshelves filled with old paperbacks and graphic novels, and an extra-large DVD case, filled top to bottom with all the hits. Frankie insisted on physical media just in case he wanted to watch something that wasn't on streaming, and admittedly, it satisfied a craving or two. Let me show you to your rooms. Frankie waved us on past an immaculate kitchen and down a large hallway. At the end of the hallway was a staircase, but just before it was 2 doors, one on the left and one on the right. He opened the door on the left to reveal a bathroom, explaining that the cabin of course had electricity and plumbing, but he glossed over the door to the right and just went upstairs. As I reached for the door to the right, I tried to turn it, but it didn't budge. Basement, Frankie replied bluntly. Best to just stay out of there. You got something locked down there? Cam asked jokingly. I've been using it as an office, Frankie explained. It's got sensitive files in there, so it puts my mind at ease to have it locked at all times. He waved us upstairs to show us where we would be spending the weekend. There was a door right at the top of the steps to the right. To the left, there was a large open area with a pool table nestled in the center, which immediately called out to me. He opened one of the doors to reveal another bathroom, and then 2 identical doors that were next to each other. These are the guest rooms, Frankie told us. I took the room closest to the bathroom and admired the view. It was a large bedroom that was already equipped with dressers, a king-sized bed, 2 nightstands, and a small chair that sat next to a sliding glass door. I tossed mine in Amelia's bags on the bed and walked out the sliding glass door onto a deck. This one apparently overlooked the backyard, which was graciously equipped with a small net for volleyball and badminton, as well as a large gravel area containing a fire pit, picnic table, and a few chairs. It also gave me a good idea at just how isolated we were here. The clearing of the property had to be maybe 2 or 3 acres. After that, it was more dense woods north and west of the lodge. I took a look east and got a nice view of the sun glistening off of the lake. I snuck across the deck and got a view of my sister's room, which was identical to mine. I shrugged and came back inside the room, where Amelia was putting all our stuff in the wardrobe. Want some help? I asked. Do I want you to just shove everything in one drawer? She laughed. No, I got it. I shrugged and rejoined my brother in the large open space. He was clearly stuck in conversation with Kyle. Some kind of get-rich-quick scheme he wanted him to finance. What's that room? I asked, pointing to the room by the top of the stairs. My room, Frankie replied. He seized his moment to exit the conversation and took us over. The room looked exactly like ours. I thought he would have gotten more extravagant furniture for his own room. But then again, my brother was a simple man. The only notable difference was that the walls weren't bare, but littered with more family photos as well as newspaper articles highlighting his career. He had a knack for finding evidence that gave slam-dunk convictions, one of the traits that led him to becoming the youngest chief of police in our small town's history at the age of only 32. But the one thing that caught my attention was a mirror that hung over his dresser directly across from his bed. On it was this old white sticker that was about the size of a bookmark. It had an old-school yellow smiley face on it and read, "Smile, you have your whole life ahead of you." I chuckled and pointed out the sticker. "Came with the house," Frankie explained. He ushered me out of his room and closed the door behind him. "I'll let everyone get settled and then come on down for lunch. I'll be outside, Feel free to grab your swimsuits and hit the lake." I gave him a firm thumbs up as he departed down the steps. I peeked into the room to see Amelia had finished unpacking, so I snuck over to the pool table for some free shooting. Once I sunk all 9 balls, Amelia and I joined my brother downstairs. Kyle and Cam followed shortly after. We met Frankie outside, where he was grilling up some burgers and hot dogs. He looked like he had just come out of the lake. "The water's not too cold, is it?" Cam asked. "Why don't you find out?" I asked. I raced past her and dove into the clear blue lake. It was surprisingly warm, but figured it was just heated up by the sun. I re-emerged and climbed back onto the deck. "It's fine," I informed her, hungrily taking a plate from my brother. We soaked up the sun and enjoyed the lake, stopping to play a few rounds of badminton before the sun had started to set. We changed into something drier and went out to enjoy a nice steak dinner by the fire pit. Before we began to eat, Cam raised a glass. "Frankie, thanks for having us up here," she said. "Congrats on your good fortune. It couldn't have happened to someone more deserving." I raised my glass haphazard, wanting to dig into my steak as quickly as possible. Amelia and Kyle did the same as we toasted my brother, who merely laughed us off. "It's our good fortune," he clarified. "We deserve it." We finally began to dig in and eat. Thankfully, the lodge had these large outdoor lights that managed to illuminate everything up to the border of the woods, so having dinner outside wasn't as creepy as it might have sounded. We sat around the picnic table and laughed for hours, but I could tell Amelia was still a bit creeped out by the woods. "Doesn't it get lonely up here?" she asked Frankie. He merely shakes his head. "I never feel alone up here," he says in a creepy voice. The reaction from Amelia gets a laugh out of Cam and I. We stayed up for a few more hours, and by 1 a.m., Cam, Kyle, and Amelia had all gone up to bed. I sat around and talked with Frankie for a bit longer, enjoying the fire pit and the dark allure of the woods. He got up to put the fire out, but I wasn't exactly ready to go to bed. "Say, did you bring your Xbox up here?" I asked. "We could play something for a bit." Frankie sighed and put out the fire in the pit. "Maybe tomorrow," he replied. "I gotta finish some work down in the office." He gets up and pats me on the shoulder. "Good night." "Night," I called back to him as he walked into the lodge. I take this time alone to partake in the small stash of pot I had locked in the car. Though not illegal, I know my brother hates the smell, and I wanted to respect his property. I lit up a small joint and took a stroll around the property until I felt appropriately baked, at which point I buried the joint, popped a stick of gum in my mouth, sprayed on some cheap body spray, and went back inside. My initial intention was to head to bed, but the munchies got the better of me as I rummaged through my brother's refrigerator, hoping that there was some leftover burgers stashed somewhere. A sound caught my attention. I followed what appeared to be crying down the hall and towards the door to my brother's office, which was now slightly ajar. I called out to him, "Frankie?" But I got no response. Perhaps it was my impaired judgment. Maybe it was my brotherly instinct to make sure Frank was okay. Or maybe it was just plain old curiosity that led me to open the door to the basement steps that first night. The stairway had a small light bulb hanging above it. "Frankie?" I called out, but instead of my brother's voice, I just heard more crying. I slowly descended the steps and realized that the staircase opened up to a large space, similar to the one upstairs. There was a desk and a lot of cardboard boxes, but there was also this large oak door that was slightly ajar. I walked past the desk and boxes and began to slowly open the door. The room behind the oak door was practically bare. The only exception was an old ratty mattress that sat on a metal bed frame. The light from the room was poor at first, but it seemed like someone was huddled on the bed. As I began to walk further in, a woman's shape became clearer. She was young, probably about 19 if I had to guess, with long black hair. She was huddled in the fetal position, wearing nothing but a small torn shirt and pair of underwear. Her ankles were slightly taped together, and her wrists were similarly taped behind her back. I took a step closer, making a small sound that alerted her. She shot up immediately. I remember the look of fear in her bright blue eyes, which were red and slightly puffy. Tape had been tightly wrapped around her mouth, so tightly that I could see where it had begun to imprint into her skin. The look of fear changed when she had saw me. And then she began to plead with me, but I couldn't understand her. I looked long and hard at her, noticing how dirty she looked. She also looked scraped and bruised, as if she was running through the brush outside. I took a step closer, almost hypnotized by her. She continued to try and say something to me. I began to slowly question reality, wonder if this was real or if I had just gotten a bad patch of pot, until my brother's voice snapped me back to reality. "Jacob!" I felt his hand grab my shoulder and yank me back through the oak door. Frankie then quickly closed and locked it as I stumbled backwards in the open space. "What did I tell you about coming down here?" he asked. I stammered. He had caught me completely off guard. I had never seen my brother with such anger in his eyes. "I heard something and just wanted to see if you were all right," I finally spit out. "Who the hell?" My brother put up his hand to stop me, took a deep breath, and walked over to the nearby desk. He took a seat and exhaled. "She's a woman I'm seeing," he told me. I gave him a look of confusion. "What the hell are you talking about?" I asked. "Look, truthfully, I've been seeing her for a few months. Her name is Claire, and she has a..." He paused, looked uncomfortable with what he was about to say. "She has a let's say, damsel in distress type of fetish." This was probably the first time I had regretted smoking so much. "So this is..." "Roleplay," Frank interrupted with an awkward chuckle. And it was at this time I finally noticed that he had been holding a revolver. But it wasn't his service weapon. It was something a lot newer. "Embarrassing, I know. Definitely not something I wanted my little brother to see." I let out a sigh of relief. Of course Frankie had a reasonable explanation. I mean, why would he lie? I thought. He placed the revolver on the desk and led me back upstairs. "I was planning for everyone to meet her tomorrow, but she's a bit shy, so we should keep this between us for now," he insisted. I don't know why, but the way Frankie spit out this sentence, it came off weird to me. "Of course," I told him. "I look forward to it." He patted me on the back as I re-entered the dark hallway. I could feel his eyes on me as I stumbled up the steps. As soon as I hit the last one, I heard the basement door creak shut. I climbed into bed with Amelia and passed out. I woke up surprisingly early the next morning. When I checked the time on my phone, it was only 7 a.m. I had looked next to me and Amelia was still fast asleep, so I slipped downstairs, hoping to sneak a meal from the fridge before breakfast. But as I got closer to the bottom, I began to smell coffee and bacon. I walked into the kitchen to see my brother already cooking breakfast. "Good morning," he greeted me. The kitchen table was lined up with waffles, eggs, bacon, sausage, coffee. Hell, the man even made cinnamon rolls. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept long. I figured he must have woken up early to prepare this magnificent feast. "Help yourself," he told me. I grabbed a plate and began to dig in. "Will your princess be joining us?" I asked, trying my best to make light of the uncomfortable situation I put my brother in. "There was an emergency," Frankie blurted out. "With work. Unfortunately, she couldn't stay." He grabs a plate of his own and joins me. "But she wanted to profusely apologize for last night. She was..." I waved him off. "That was my bad," I told him. "Won't happen again." My brother mumbled a response and dug into his breakfast. And the way he just easily dismissed it didn't sit right with me. In fact, Frankie's demeanor didn't change at all throughout the day. I had figured there'd be at least some aura of embarrassment. And after I got about 4 cinnamon rolls in, I realized something. Frankie's car was the only other one here, aside from mine and Cam's. So how did Claire end up leaving? We spent the day outside again. More lakeside fun and barbecue food. But I just couldn't shake off this feeling I had ever since my encounter with Frankie at breakfast. I began to get more paranoid once I saw the shed. I went in there to grab some fire starters when I noticed his shovel. It wouldn't seem so out of place, but it looks like it had just been used. So, when Frankie decided to turn in early that night, I decided I had to get a better, sober look in that basement, if for no other reason than to simply put myself at ease. I waited for everyone to fall asleep before sneaking down the steps of the lodge. I used the chirping of the crickets as a safety blanket of sorts, to assure me I wasn't alone. I made it to the basement door and tried it, hoping it would be unlocked, but no luck. I went to the front door and grabbed Frankie's keys that hung on a hook by the door. I tried every key on that hook with no luck, until finally, I heard a click. I slipped into the basement, carrying the keys with me, and slowly descended the stairs. I took a look at Frankie's desk, and noticed that there was nothing on it but an old box. I took a quick look inside, to find various items inside individual Ziploc bags. I pulled out one bag that contained an old metal ring. It was shaped like a skull and looked cheap and gaudy. Written on it in Sharpie was a name, Marcus Jackson. It took me a while, but I remember where I had heard it before. Marcus Jackson was a tattoo artist who set up close to town. One day, they found him murdered in the back lot of a local deli. Frankie had been the one to find his bloody wallet in Marcus's girlfriend's car. Though she swore up and down that she was innocent, the evidence was too much to deny and she was sentenced to life. I began looking through the box. All of them contained an item from a case that Frankie had solved. The next bag I pulled out contained a lipstick tube of Maria Williams. She was a bartender, a pretty girl who'd often get flirted with by the waves of drunken customers. They found her beaten to death and assaulted in her car. Frankie had found her discarded bra in Josh Schultz's trailer, as if he had taken it for a trophy. Josh was the town drunk, and though he swore he didn't do it, he couldn't account for his whereabouts due to him blacking out. Every bag contained something from one of those cases. I backed away in horror and collide with that oak door. I rip it open and examine the room with fresh eyes. The first thing I notice was a folding table off to my left. I creep up onto the table to find more Ziploc bags, but there was more of them here than in the box on his desk. There had to be about 20 of them. Each one contained the driver's license of a young woman and a pair of underwear. I recognized each town as being very close to our small town. One of the names even looked very familiar, Maria Williams. There was one pair that had been left out of the bag, and it looked strangely familiar. I walked over to the end of the table to find this particular pair of underwear accompanied by the license of one Claire Thompson. I turned to look at the ratty bed, and for the first time, saw how old and worn it was. There was cuffs dangling from the old metal bars of the bed frame. A collar was laid on the bed, attached to a chain that I followed to a metal plate mounted on the wall. But one spot on the frame looked altered. It seemed like there was a metal clip welded onto the frame, and surprisingly enough, it had matched the clip that connected the collar on the bed to the chain attached to the wall. I looked up and finally noticed it. I don't know how I could have missed it. In front of the bed was a strange mirror, and plastered on that mirror was a sticker. An old, white sticker that was about the size of a bookmark. The same sticker that had an old-school yellow smiley face on it. The same one that read, "Smile. You have your whole life ahead of you." Thank you for listening to Whisperwood Stories. If you enjoyed, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe down below. Do you have a story that you'd like me to read here? Consider commenting or sending it to whisperwoodsubmissions@gmail.com. The story in this video was read with the author's permission. Thank you again for listening, and be sure to check out the original Reddit post. Want to support me? Check the link below where you can leave a tip if you wish. And remember, don't let the shadows get too close. Good night.